Hi, I'm Max Tucci. I always wanted to do a show where I can introduce you to celebrities, newsmakers, and everyday people. Whichever they may be, they are all an inspiration. Today I'm going to sit down with an author, an inspirational speaker, an entrepreneur, and my friend, Vicki Higgins. Today we'll sit down in Unity on the Bay to find out why I keep my eye on Vicki Higgins. Today I'm here with Vicki Higgins, who is a contributing author to the book No Mistakes, and of course how you can change adversity into abundance. Can we really change adversity into abundance?
Oh, I'm a big believer. Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure.
It's an honor. Thank you.
So you're a believer in it?
I am. I believe that there is no mistake. Everything does happen for a reason, and you can take those challenges. Often they're the real gold nuggets to turn those into abundance for your own life.
So speaking of life, let's go back to Vicki as a little girl in Indiana.
Sure.
Because obviously that is a big part of your story.
Well, I grew up in Indiana. I had a mom, dad, little sister, and initially in my life things were great. But as I started to get a little bit older, 8, 9, 10, my dad started having mood swings that were really more volatile. And over the course of time, they became even more volatile. So they were verbal abuse and starting into physical abuse. I remember one time I was coming back from babysitting and I woke up my dad. It was very late at night, Indiana, 11 o'clock, thunderstorm, and he was sound asleep, and I came in really loud and woke him up, and he was very upset, and I heard footsteps coming through the hallway, and suddenly a couch goes flying across the room and ashtray at my head, and he whips me around and hits me and says that you have no respect for anybody. You're never gonna be anything. You know, I can't believe you. And he's like, you don't think about anybody else. I have to be up at 4 a.m. And so he was just really, it was a really tough moment, but it wasn't the first time he hit me, but it was a very defining moment for me because I realized at that time I was going to change my life. Didn't know how, but I made a really clear, conscious decision. I didn't cry. I was 14 years old, didn't cry. I was really stoic, and I made a decision at that time that I was not going to live like that. Didn't know how, but I knew I wasn't going to live like that, and I was going to change the trajectory of my life. And I have. And I think from that challenge, growing up in Indiana and having that type of self-esteem crushing incident, that led me to not have self-confidence and feel like I wasn't good enough. I think that it really helped me realize at a later time in my life how I could learn from that and help other people that were really facing some challenges as well.
Now, your father was diagnosed with bipolar?
Yeah, later in life, my father was diagnosed as bipolar. He left when I was 14, and then I had no other contact with him, and he's since passed. But we did have a moment to do some forgiveness and did a lot of inner child work. But he,
no, that's so important.
Do
you remember your voice as a little girl?
I do.
It's beautiful when you can.
Yeah.
Because when people go through that whole traumatic experience,
right,
they really lose that inner child. So it's beautiful that you reconnected.
Well, and sometimes even going through that process, I learned to, if I felt fearful or that I wasn't certain of a direction, I would remember that, like, okay, at 7 years old and 12 years old and 14 years old, it's okay. I'm in control now, and I'm taking care of you. Nobody's going to hurt you.
At 12.
And so I had to. Well, as an adult, I would think back to those childhood times and think back almost like you were carrying a child and saying, I've got you, it's okay. And I would be able to put those fears away that were fears that still stemmed up from that childhood. And so I was able to do a lot of work on recognizing if those fears were coming from that past or if they were real true fears that I was facing in that moment as an adult.
So what were they?
I was really afraid of not being good enough. I was afraid of having a voice. I was told so many times that, you're not good enough, nobody's ever gonna like you, you can't do anything right. And I was really afraid to try anything because I felt a fear that I wasn't going to be able to do it right.
How long did that follow you?
Oh my gosh, it still follows me, but it followed me for a long time, especially in the early part of my life, in my 20s. I made some poor decisions. I wouldn't speak up in class. I was very shy, go figure. But I was very shy because I just didn't feel like anyone cared what I thought. So being a shy child and teen led into self-esteem issues as an early 20s person. And then I got married, and lo and behold, I was afraid to voice my opinion, and I was afraid that I was going to do something wrong, and things started crumbling in my marriage, and I was afraid to say anything about it.
You were losing yourself.
Yeah, I really hadn't even taken the time to find myself. So then my marriage fell apart, and that's when I was like, wait a minute, I need to do some work on me. Before I ever get into another relationship, I need to figure out me.
What were the signs? Because when you come from that, as a little girl, that abusive relationship, then you're in a marriage, what are signs that you can see, okay, this marriage isn't working?
You know, communication, I think, is the biggest thing. We tried to have some communication, and I was so afraid of saying something wrong.
So this was
or
a
not being right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And a pathology at this point.
And a pathology at that point. And so this fear just overcame me, and I was really afraid to cook something that was bad, that it wouldn't be right. And the communication was one of the biggest things. I couldn't really say what I felt, and I was afraid to have those tough conversations. I was afraid that I wouldn't be wanted, I wouldn't be desired, you know, if I brought up something that was uncomfortable. And I think that's one of the first stages of a marriage not being able to hold it together is
harmony.
Just communication.
No harmony.
Right.
Harmony's so big.
Yeah, it is, it's huge. Right.
So who was your saving grace as a child?
You know, my grandmother and my grandfather. My grandparents were wonderful. I actually moved in with them when my father left. And so they were great role models. I have a wonderful family, very supportive, very loving, and they were quite empowering. And my mom, although she was struggling going through the divorce of my father, she really had the motto of, where there's a will, there's a way.
And there was a way.
And there was a way.
I see on Instagram you spend time with your grandmother.
Oh yes, I love her. She just turned 87, so excited.
And you were mowing the lawn with her.
Oh yeah, cleaning out gutters, mowing the lawn. I stay very grounded when I go visit.
It's beautiful. So your grandmother saved you.
Yeah, my grandmother and my mom, you know, I mean, they were both two women that were very strong. But they believed in me, and they gave me the confidence and the courage that I needed at those young ages to really start looking at what I wanted to create in life. And I looked back at some of those challenges and realized that I wanted to help people and I wanted to create a better life. So I was the first person in my whole family to go to college and graduate. I was the first person to actually get a master's degree. I went on to have some great career steps, and I've just left a very nice career as an executive vice president and chief marketing officer to be an entrepreneur and have my own business. So I actually have 3 businesses.
So to find yourself.
Yeah,
There's no mistakes.
No mistakes, no mistakes.
No mistakes.
It always continues to evolve.
When do you feel that moment was that you were like, okay, this is who my authentic self is. This is me.
You know, I feel like I was a late bloomer in that. I don't know if anybody else feels that way, but I think in my teens I was really struggling to fit in, and I never really fit in. And then in my 20s I was really having fun, but I was also going through a divorce, and I was trying to figure all that out. And you know, I think I was a bit of a late bloomer in finding myself. I would say I was probably in my early to late 30s. I really
There's no period in life for you.
Yeah.
That's the wrong time.
I know, right?
30s is perfect.
See, it still comes up. Is that right or wrong? But it really was. It was that like, oh, this is what I want to do, and I'm going to go after it. And so I really just honed in on who I was and had that really just beautiful confidence that came out, and I started following my inner guidance.
We're going to talk about that when we come back, your inner guidance. I love the inner guidance, the intuition.
Absolutely.
We'll be right back.
Thank you.
So we're back with Vicki Higgins, who contributed to the book No Mistakes, How You Can Change Adversity into Abundance. We were just talking about your intuition. When was it that your intuition basically like kicked you in the ass?
Well, you know, I was one of the people that in my teens, 20s, and 30s, I always asked for other people's opinion. I would ask, what do you think about this job? Or what do you think about this boyfriend? Or what do you think about this dress? You know, and it was just always seeking other people's opinion. And I realized at some point I needed to listen to my own opinion and my own direction, because other people's opinions were just clear on their path and not my path. They knew enough about their own path, but they didn't know as much as about mine.
Did you share your story with them, or did you keep it
You know,
closeted?
I kind of kept it closeted. I was really that spiritual in the closet person for such a long time. And I had one career life, and then a personal private life that was very spiritual. And so I really started recognizing that those two needed to merge, and my intuition really needed to be the lead on where I was going in my life. So it was really in my 30s I decided to move to Los Angeles, and I also decided quickly, just listening to that inner guidance, to follow my heart and do what I wanted to do and not what everybody else.
So you go to Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Where are you? State of mind, where are you? Like in your life, where are you?
At that point,
is it broken? Are you together? Where are you?
Healing, middle road. I'd been divorced for a few years, healing. I would say not at the epitome of everything is fabulous, but I really had the confidence and the certainty that I wanted to move to Los Angeles. I had the opportunity to take a job there that just all worked right into place. And I love when that happens. And so I felt like the flow. I was in the flow. I felt like it was where I was supposed to be.
Yeah.
And I even knew it was probably short term because I felt like there was something more that I needed to do. And I think a lot of us have that feeling like we need to do something in a bigger way to help change the world or change people's minds or contribute. Mm-hmm. But I felt like that was the first step. So I was pretty much in the flow. I was starting to move in a good direction at that point.
So being in the flow, now you have your steps.
Yes.
Is that one of your steps that you talk about?
Yeah.
In No Mistakes?
There are 5 steps.
You have this 5-step program.
I have this 5-step program.
Let's talk about the 5-step program, because I think the importance of it is really to set people free from themselves and how to understand to get into the flow.
Right.
So for you, these are your 5 steps, would you say, to get in the flow?
Yeah, for sure. Okay. And to reset your life. Really resetting your life is
That's
getting you into the flow. Exactly. So I think the first step is the foundation, setting the foundation. And that is really understanding where you've come from and recognizing that that's okay and being able to let it go. And the second step is finding the gold. And that is really looking at those challenges and not only looking at the challenges based on what was hard for you or difficult and traumatic or being victimized, but also what were the learnings that came out of that. And so finding an equal number of positive and negative things that came about because of that challenge. So that's really a deep part of that 5-step program, is really recognizing what your challenges are. And again, forgiveness, letting go, taking care of that inner child that was hurt so many years ago. And so really doing some work in that area takes a little bit of time. And then once you can do some releasing and letting go of those limiting beliefs and those blocks that have maybe held you back, then you can start writing your dream life. So step number 3 is writing your dream life. And that's really fun, and it takes, I had a hard time. I was like, oh my gosh, I want so many things. I don't even know where to start.
Right.
So I put together a really simple program, which are 8 F's, and I'll talk about those later.
Yes, the F words.
Yeah, all the F words. I'm a big fan. So really writing your dream life and visualizing where it is you want to go, because I find that a lot of people let life happen to them. Whereas we have the control to be in the flow and direct where we want it to go. We can create what we want it to be like. So if I provide a guide in each of those areas of your life, then you can start visualizing and creating what it is you want to have happen and what you want to manifest in each of the areas of your life. It's just a step, but it's great.
A beautiful one.
Yeah.
It takes 1 step to walk 1,000 miles.
Oh, so. It does. You have to start. You have to take action. You can't just sit there.
So step number 4?
So step number 4 is actually creating the action plan. So creating a strategy. I think that, I look at things from a business mind, and I've been in business for 20 years. So I look at it from a business mind, and you can have a dream and a plan, but until you have a strategy and an action program, it just stays hope. My friend calls it hopium. A lot of people are on hopium. They just have a hope out there that it's going to happen, but they have no strategy.
Right.
So then the last step in the 5-step program is step number 5, and that's actually taking that step, execution. And so I provide some steps and tips on how people can actually make these things come into their reality so that their dream life really does come into existence for them, yeah.
From hoping to knowing.
Exactly.
Right?
In the flow.
It's in the flow. Well, when we come back, we're going to talk about your F words. And we'll be right back with Vicki Higgins. And we're talking about No Mistakes. I love the book. We've spoken about it before. And I just love going from adversity into abundance. And we're going to talk about your F words, I promise, because that was just a great tease to get into there. But what does abundance mean to you?
It's a question that I pose to a lot of people. I think that society has kind of tricked us into thinking that abundance is all about finances, you know, money, power, status, success. And I think that abundance, looking at all those different F words that we'll talk about in a moment, I think abundance is really how it feels in each one of those areas of your life. So it's much more about life success and life abundance than it is about financial abundance, although that's part of it. I think you need to have financial abundance to not only take care of yourself, your family, your loved ones, but also to help people and to make change in the world. You can help more people if you have financial abundance. But to me, abundance is life abundance in all the different areas.
Absolutely. You know, I wake up every morning, I'm like, whatever the universe has for me, I receive the abundance of it.
Absolutely.
And it's limitless.
Right.
You know, it's like earlier we were speaking about the future. I'm like, let's live right now and just enjoy the abundance of the moment without putting a limit on what we think is for us.
Right.
So with that it's said, you have these 8 F words.
Right.
We're going to add 9. We're going to add flow to the end.
Absolutely. I think that's a good
Because once you
to
get
add.
the 8, then you get into
Then
the
you're
flow.
in the flow.
So you're in the 9.
Perfect.
But so with these 8, you have finances, you have fitness, you have all of these words that people like run away from. We don't want to deal with them. And it becomes a mistake, but then it becomes there are no mistakes. So run into them. How do we run into these 8 Fs? And tell us
you
them.
know, I mean, I used the 8 Fs a long time ago when I was going through a challenge with my divorce. I was depressed. I was really trying to find my way out of a depressing state, and I didn't want to be on medication. And
What was
I
the
could
depression?
only, it was after my divorce, I was just, I felt a bit like a failure, you know, and all those childhood things were kind of coming back, and
So you're breaking
everything
the
was
pattern.
everything was
breakthrough.
converging. Yes, and
There's
I
a
was breaking a
breakthrough.
pattern. And so I decided at that time that I didn't want to be on any medication. I wanted to get through this. I knew I could,
We
but
all
I
can.
found that I was really focusing on the bad stuff. So I thought, you know, I need to focus on some good things in my life. So I created the 8 Fs, and they're pretty, you know, common and easy. I like things simple. So faith, whatever that means to you, spirituality, meditation, family. So I have a great family I could rely on and spend time with. Friends, fitness or health or wellness, finances, my firm or my career, and feelings, and fun experiences. And so I made a list, and along the left-hand side, I just had each of the 8 Fs, and in no particular order. And then across the top of the list, I had every day of the week. And so by the end of the week, I just needed to have a check mark in each one of those areas. And lo and behold, first week, I just needed to do one thing. And it was so hard for me to figure out something fun, you know, in that state of mind. But then as I started going through it, I realized that I was no longer focusing on the depressing, bad divorce. I was focusing on great things that were really fulfilling me and filling up my tank of love and joy. And so that helped me feel better and have the energy to move forward. And then I've really instituted the 8 Fs throughout my whole life. Decision making, when I made the decision to move from the Midwest out to California, I looked at how that decision was going to impact each one of those areas, and I realized that it was going to pretty positively impact most of those areas. So it's really become a tool for me to use in some of my decision making, and in sometimes when I'm feeling a little bit like, what do I do? You know, I'll look back at the 8 Fs and realize that, you know, as long as I'm doing something in each one of those areas every week, it really helps me get from an ugly place to a really bright light, beautiful place.
It's a beautiful vibration.
Yeah,
A beautiful vibration.
yeah.
So you're divorced, you're in debt, and you're
was.
depressed.
I was. It was having a real convergence.
You
of,
were. You're
like,
not anymore.
The
You
perfect
were.
storm of bad
Right.
things.
So with those 3 Ds,
Right.
here you are now in California.
Right.
You landed this job as an executive.
Right.
And then this flow starts happening.
Yeah, I really paid attention to how I was feeling, and feeling is one of the key parts of the Fs. You know, how are you feeling? And I really checked in with that.
Why do you think it is we run from the feeling?
I think it's a really scary place for people to look inside and do that introspective work. It's so easy in our society to be busy, to jam in friends and dry cleaners and bank at lunch hour, and to be busy at night, and to have things go, and TV and radio and video games, and there's and cell phones and texting, and you know, there's just always so much to do that I think it's easier just to be busy and to not think about it than it is to face some of those feelings that might come up.
The adversities.
The adversities, the challenges, and the uncertainty. And so when you really face it, a lot of times it's it gives you the opportunity to allow it to dissipate. But when you don't face it, it becomes bigger and bigger. It's like those lessons, you know, if you don't learn a lesson once, it's going to come back around in a bigger way. So I think when we don't learn a lesson or we don't face some things, it comes back around in a bigger way until we pay attention to it, and then it dissipates. And it's really nice the way it dissipates. And so I was wonderfully surprised that as I actually took a little personal journey.
What was that personal journey?
You know, it was just
because people are watching, they're like, this sounds all like rainbows and clouds
I know, right?
and fairy tales.
You know,
what
mine was
the
really
journey?
real. I was working a full-time job, and I chose not to date. I chose just to focus on me for a little while and focus my time in those 8 Fs. And that was really my personal journey. You know, I didn't really have much faith at that time, so I tried to do some exploring and figure out what I felt.
You read like 300 self-help books.
I know, right? I did. I read like 300 self-help books, lots of meditation, lots of spiritual exploration, and I really learned what I wanted and what I felt was, you know, right for me.
What is it that you wanted?
You know, I wanted just to have peace and happiness in my life, and I wanted to feel content in each one of those areas.
What brings you peace now?
And now it's just living each day in the moment, in the flow, and it's beautiful. I love my life now, and I feel so connected. Feel so connected in my faith. I feel I'm in the best shape of my life. I have amazing friends that are changing the world. I have a fabulous family. I always check in each day on how I feel and make sure that my vibration is like in a good place and that I'm being grateful and thankful for the things that are in my life. And I also really try to have fun. I love life, and I look at life like a childhood zest now. You know, I had a little bit of a difficult childhood, so I feel like now I can play and have fun, and all those things bring me peace. Yeah, sometimes, you know. So it's a really good opportunity for me to have fun and fun experiences and create life now that I want.
Beautiful. No, it's beautiful. And the flow, the whole flow is just when you get into it.
Yeah,
I would
it's
say get into the flow or
awesome.
get lost in the wake.
Oh, it's
right?
beautiful, yeah.
So no mistakes.
Right.
How did this even come about? Because there are 30 contributors to this book.
Right.
And they're all personal, intimate stories of their life, how they've changed from adversity into abundance, how they started receiving abundance. So how did you get the call to say, Vicki, I want you part of No Mistakes?
Well, first I had done my personal journey. I realized that there were some other things in my life that were calling to me. I like to write, and I saw a contest to join the contest for a speaker and an author. And I joined the contest. There were 300 or 400 people that joined that contest. And I thought, oh, you know, we'll see what happens with this. So I joined because I was going to try and help my sister. And then I realized that we needed to do the story on ourselves. And so I was like, oh, great. So I joined. I ended up coming in the top 5, and I had to tell my story to about 300 people on stage in Yosemite, California. So that started this flow that really just easily transpired. I talked with a publisher. He wanted my story for this book. It all happened really easily, and now I'm working on my next book. So
What's the title of your next book?
The title of my next book is When Work Isn't Working.
When Work
I think
Isn't Working.
we need to rethink what success means in life and look at it much more from that abundance in each area of life rather than the societal
And the
expectation.
joy of working.
Yeah, and the
People
joy
work for
of
money. When you work for joy, money comes.
Oh yeah,
right?
totally. Absolutely. It's being in the flow.
Now, I love you have a quote in
Yes.
the book, page
Page
183. Tell me your favorite quote.
My favorite quote is by Howard Thurman, and it's, "Don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive, and go do that. Because what the world needs is more people who've come alive."
And you're alive.
Yeah, I love it.
How do you feel coming alive?
It's beautiful. I want more people to really have that experience, because when we listen to our intuition and we follow that guidance, it allows us to really just be in the flow of life, and it's amazing.
What does being alive mean to you?
Being alive to me means enjoying every moment and being grateful when I go to bed at night, and waking up excited because I get to do things like this, I get to help people, and I just get to create the life that I want each day.
Beautiful. Now, your grandmother, I know, is a big part of your life.
Oh, yes.
We spoke about her. So, grandmother, we're here right now. How would she finish the sentence, Vicki Higgins is?
Vicki Higgins is my amazing granddaughter, and I don't know what she would say. She is just a spitfire. She'll probably tell you that I cheat at cards. We love to play cards
There's
together.
no mistakes in that, though.
There are no mistakes.
Well, thank you so much, because we're taking adversity and we're really bringing it into abundance.
Thank you.
And I know that no mistakes will help people, and your story is going to be one of inspiration.
There are 30 stories in there. So.
30 inspirational
That's
stories
right.
of how to bring adversity into abundance.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Vicki
Thank you so much.
Higgins. This is great.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right.